All right, I think we're live. I think it worked.
Great.
First live. Welcome to everybody who's watching. We're so excited to have you here. I am Sarah Kuhn. I'm the INFJ Woman and the host of the Quiet Ones podcast. And my guest today is Gabby Valdes. I'm so excited to have you here, Gabby.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Sarah.
Gabby is a relationship coach. All right, I think we're live. I think it worked. I have
Great.
two different things that I can hear now. Okay, can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Nope. I'm Sarah Kuhn. I'm INFJ Woman and the host of the Quiet Ones podcast. Okay.
At least it sounds great.
It works. That's the fun part of doing something new that you've never done before.
Yes, I'm in this with you.
Yes, so I'm so excited to have you here. So many people send me relationship questions, and I'm like, so the worst person to ask. And I always tell them, you need to go ask Gabby. So hopefully we will have some people join us and we'll have some questions live. And if not, I have plenty of questions.
Great. Yeah, well, let's see if anything is coming through. If not, happy just to chat with you. Our conversations are always so life-giving. So I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So first of all, how are you handling the quarantine? How's everything going?
It's all right. Taking it day by day, to be completely honest. I have days where I literally do not want to do anything, and I'm allowing that. I am like a recovering workaholic. So, and it's all good though, because the work that I do, I love. It's my life purpose. So I'm like, this is awesome. And during the quarantine, I literally don't want to do anything, and I'm trying to unlearn that voice of productivity to always be on and always do things. So that's actually been a really humbling and healing process. But yeah, honestly, I'll be honest, most days I'm just sitting on the couch staring at my screen for hours and not producing, and then stepping away from the screen and being like, okay, this is fine. I'm going to cook. I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to watch TV and it's going to be okay. And then there's some days, a small percentage of those days, where I feel really inspired. And that's mostly after I talk to friends like you, or a bunch of other people in my community that get it and they're resting. And then they're also having days of creativity and they're allowing that too. So it just kind of comes and goes.
Yeah. It's kind of the same for me, except mine's a little bit reversed. And maybe part of the difference is you're an extrovert and I'm an introvert. So I just wrote a blog post this morning about kind of a day-by-day diary of how my quarantine has been so far. And the first 10 days were kind of like business as usual. I was like, this is really how my life is. I don't really do that much extra. I had a coffee date with one of my friends planned that I had to cancel, and that was kind of a bummer, but it was not that big of a deal. And then I got some news about my mom.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have the coronavirus, but she's sick. And because of it, well, I wouldn't say sick. She has a condition. She has a heart condition that we just found out about. So because of the coronavirus, she can't go to the doctor and can't go to the hospital to get all the tests that she needs. So it's they're kind of guessing at how bad it is. As she's doing all of her appointments over FaceTime, which is not the same as being there in person. So up until that point, I was like, yeah, I think I'm okay. And then after that, I was like, no, I'm really not okay.
Yeah.
And then I realized that I had just piled on so much work. And I have tons and tons of ideas of things to do. And I was finishing my first book. And as soon as I got my book done and out, I crashed. And I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to get out of bed. I'm just gonna sit here for a week and hopefully it gets better. And what I had to do was go outside. It's been kind of nice here in Boston, and thankfully I live right across the street from the beach. And they finally closed the beach parking lot because there was a ton of people here, like people that don't live in town. And they finally closed the parking lot. So now there's plenty of room and not as many people. And it was nice to go outside, and I kind of got back into a little bit more of my routine. I found a Starbucks that's open. They have a drive-through, and they're like really great about, you know, not getting too close. And I've been to a couple of my favorite restaurants because I thought, you know, we should support the restaurants because I know that they're suffering a lot right now. And so many of them have great setups for like contactless, you know, pickup, which is good. So yeah, just getting back out, getting outside. The sunlight makes such a huge difference.
It really does. You really inspired me. I honestly haven't been outside in like 4 days.
Yeah.
I'm really realizing how much of an extrovert I am, because it's gotten to the point now where I'm cycling, where I'm like, I don't want to do anything because I don't have any energy. But then since I'm not doing anything, I still don't have any energy. And so I kind of get stuck.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because I would always kind of resonate as like an ambivert. I was like, oh, I mean, I love my alone time. This is great. But during this time, I'm like, no, I'm really extroverted. I get a lot of my energy from being in like spaces and feeding off energy. And I was like, okay, I know this about myself now. I won't be in denial. I thought I was an introvert, but I'm not.
Right. Right. Well, every time I take the test, I'm like 80 to 90% introverted. So I don't know if I just answer the questions that way because that's how I feel at the moment. But I really feel like I need to be outside. And maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe I took the test. I have major depression. And so when I take the test, when I'm in one of those depressive states, then of course it's going to be a lot more introverted.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe because it's lifting a little bit now, then it's like, oh, maybe it's not 80% introverted. Maybe it's actually less now.
Yeah.
And it's made a huge difference too, connecting with so many INFJs, INFPs, and with you, ENFP. And I think I have one other ENFJ. I think my accountability coach is an ENFJ. But yeah, it makes a huge difference.
It really does.
So yes. All right. So let's talk about dating. Dating, I'll be really honest with you, just throw it all out there.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Dating is the worst thing in the whole entire world.
Are you saying this like during quarantine or just in general?
No, I mean just in general. And the whole quarantine for me is like just an excuse to not go there again. And then when we were talking last week, you were like, no, people are dating in quarantine. I'm like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it all. Like, I've heard people that are like, I'm using this time for myself, and I totally respect that. And others are like, yeah, I'm like meeting new people or going on video dates. Like, you can tour museums. You can take like virtual tours of museums, amusement parks, aquariums. You can play like Jackbox games. You can do house party games. And then some people are just kind of like indifferent. So it's like, I share that saying that like everyone has their own relationship to dating and nothing is right or wrong. Like, how do you want to spend your energy during this time? Like, some days I'm like, I don't think I have the energy to relate to a new person. Like, I can continue connecting with people in my life, like friends and family that I already have like a solid relationship with, but like the idea of going on a date and connecting with somebody new, especially during this time, like, I don't want to do that. And then there's days where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to have a connection with somebody, and then I'll go on a virtual date and it will go great. So it's, again, just kind of taking things day by day, figuring out what you need, and then knowing that like there is no right or wrong. Like, whatever you need in that moment is going to be like the best thing for you.
So do you feel like once the quarantine is over and things start to go back to normal, I mean, I know it's going to be a process. It isn't just going to be like flipping a switch like they did to get us in this situation. Do you feel like people's personalities are going to change? I asked that because one of my friends who is an introvert, I didn't realize how much of a germaphobe he was until like the whole coronavirus thing happened. And then we started talking about restaurants, and he's like telling me about pre-coronavirus how he wasn't really interested in going to restaurants, and now he's like, I may never go to a restaurant again.
Okay.
So like he went from he went from being like laid back and pretty much chill to like, oh my god, the world is ending, nothing is ever going to be okay again, like doomsday prepper type.
Mm-hmm.
um so I'm just wondering, and I know that not everybody is on that level, but I even feel like I've changed a little bit in that process. So do you think that there will be a change and an adjustment afterwards?
Oh, certainly. I don't think that we're going to go back to normal. Like, we're all going to evolve and grow from this. And I think we're all learning during this time what we truly value, who we want to be. And that's going to carry forward beyond this. And the really cool thing to know is that we have the technology and the means to do dating any way that you want it. So like if someone chooses to never go to a restaurant, they have the opportunity to connect with people virtually, or to, you know, invite somebody back to their home, or like, or go to a park, or there's all of these different possibilities. Like just knowing that whatever you choose, you want to feel safe. Like if you don't want to go to a restaurant, then like don't go to a restaurant. But if you also do want to go to a restaurant, and of course like it's the time to do so, like we're all allowed to do that, then yeah, certainly go. Like I know for me, I feel like, especially as an extrovert, once it's all okay, I'm gonna go to like a bar, and I don't even drink. Like I just want to like go to a bar and experience people. I'm probably gonna hug so many strangers, like but I think it's just to say that like everyone's gonna have their own experience, just like we're having our own experience in self quarantine. Like everyone's going to have their own experience when this is all over, and our relationship to dating and relationships are all going to change. Like some people may even prioritize relationships more than they did work, and that could be really huge for them. And for me, it's like solidified that like the thing that keeps me going, one of my other purposes is like connection and belonging. Like I'm always going to put people and connections and community before anything. So it kind of like solidifies that value that I have. So it's really cool to see like what's coming from this, and people are starting to like prioritize different things.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I've learned out of it too, is that connection is huge and it's so important for me too. Even as an introvert, it's important. But the connection for me though is like, I want to connect authentically with people who really matter to me and who can talk about really deep and important things. Um, and I don't know if it's part of it's the quarantine thing, or part of it's that I'm just getting old, or it's like I don't have time for shallow people anymore. I just don't even want to do it. It's because once you've experienced having a connection with somebody who is really close to your personality type, or in any way intuitive, then it's like, why do we spend our time talking to other people? I know that might sound really rude, but it's true. It makes such a huge difference because there's so much that you don't have to explain and they just get it, you know?
Yeah, and it's a filter, just like anything, because you have a value for deep connection. So why put your energy and time into something that isn't going to meet you where you're at? So if you're seeking depth, then own it and then go get it. Which is so interesting because like you're not alone in this. Like, I mean, I certainly have had that too, where I'm like, I don't want to be too much. I've talked to some clients that are like, I don't want to like ask all these deep questions because I'm afraid that they're going to unmatch me or they're going to reject me. And yes, rejection is so painful. At the same time, like you're not abandoning yourself in that moment. You're like, I really see this ability to go deep and be passionate as a gift, and I'm going to lead with that, and the right people are going to resonate with it. So that's, and then of course like that's still like a process, so I totally empathize with like, oh, that's going to take a lot of time and energy, but in that process you're choosing yourself instead of choosing to not be who you are.
Yeah. Let's talk about rejection a little bit, because that's like, I feel like that's one of the worst things in the world for me.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to rejection, and we have to throw in there, not only am I INFJ, but I'm codependent as well. Like, I own that. That's something that I'm working on very, very religiously. But rejection is like one of those things that it's almost the worst thing for me. And being an INFJ, I see so much and I can just like read past what people are saying. So it's like, not even if they openly reject me, but if I even feel like the slightest little bit that I'm being rejected, then it's like, it's so painful. It's like physically painful. So how do you deal with that? How do you move on from that and be like, okay, this is going to be physically painful, but I'm going to do it anyway?
Yeah, I'm just really curious about this because there's like different shades of like rejection, right? Or like what's going on emotionally. Maybe what are some scripts that are happening in your mind, or what are some, you even said like on a visceral level, like what is that thing in you? Because in order to kind of decipher like what you actually need in that moment, it's like really tuning into like your body cues, what's going on in your mind. Do you feel comfortable sharing that? Like, do you have an example of like what a rejection feels like? Because I do want to like create space for that. Rejection's really hard, so I want to understand more to then be able to like come up with some ideas.
It's even like, so I was messaging somebody on Instagram and all of a sudden they just stopped, right? So it's like, kind of, and it wasn't really ghosting. It was like we were talking about deep things, and then I didn't get a message for a while, for like a few days, and then it was a few weeks, and it was like, okay, what happened? And I'm not direct, like I'm extremely direct, right? Until it comes to stuff like this, and then I'm like, no, I'm not gonna ask. Like, why would I ask? You know? So with that, but it's like, I could almost feel the change in the tone of their text messages, where it's like, okay, there's something different happening here.
Yeah.
And part of it for me is like, okay, what did I say? What did I do? How do I fix it? How do I make it different? But then at the same time, I'm trying to accept myself and work on myself the way that I am, and be like, okay, I'm fine the way that I am. And if this person doesn't think that, then they're not the right person for me, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to even acknowledge the sophisticated like defense system that you have of like, okay, something feels wrong. Because I mean, that's true. Like you want to honor that. Like that is put there for a reason. And it's in a way, it's like, okay, something has shifted. Something is up. And so I'm really curious about, because you're honoring that. And then I'm really curious about like is it hesitation? The hesitation to reach out and be direct.
I think
Is that
that's
the right word? Okay.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, because it happens not only in romantic relationships, but in friendships as well. I've noticed that the new friendships that I have are a lot different, but the older ones that I've had are kind of like I have a friend who I have really, really awesome conversations with, like every once in a while, maybe once every 6 months. But when I reach out to her on Facebook, she doesn't really respond, or she will with like a one-word answer. So and we don't live in the same town. She lives, across the country. So it's difficult, it's like, okay, what did I do? Or am I trying too hard? Am I not trying hard enough? Like, should I reach out? Should I, it's just like this war that goes back and forth in my head and there's definitely a pattern. Like, there's a lot of relationships in my life that are like that, where it's like, okay, what do I do? Do I just let them go because I'm trying too hard, or I don't.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, I mean, you really value connection. And we've talked about this, and I can even hear it as you're sharing this story. Like, of course you're worrying, or of course you're thinking like, what can I fix? What did I do wrong? This is you really care about the relationship. And I heard earlier that you said that you have like two different types of friends, or like maybe certain kind of communities or categories. I'm really curious about that. So like, did you have like a group of friends that maybe like exhibited these type of patterns, and then maybe like your second group of friends, you were kind of like, maybe you showed up differently in that way, and then they started to like hear and see you more? Like, I'm really curious about like the differences between the two.
They're not really groups. I don't think any of them really know each other. Some of them might like casually know each other. Some of them from like the older group, I would say, loosely, like the ones who aren't that great, honestly. I think maybe what happened is I've kind of evolved as a person. And because I'm placing more value on connection and meeting a certain kind of people, and um, making friends with people who value connection and who are in business and who have a similar personality type to me. And because I've been working so much on myself and I'm understanding more of the whole self-love codependency thing, I know what I want from those people, and I know what I'm going to accept. But then there's the old friends that I've been a whole different person around, and it's like, oh, hey, I'm a new person now. I've changed. And they're used to the old person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I were giving advice, I would tell, whoever was telling me this, I'd be like, listen, you need to let your old friends go. But it's so difficult though, because like some of these friends I've been friends with for 10 years. And one of them is like probably the closest thing that I've ever had to a lifelong best friend, because most of my friends just come and go. So it's really hard for me to just be like, we can't be friends anymore, but then how do you change the relationship too?
Ooh, I have so many things about this because I like totally relate to this as well. First of all, I want to just share that like, yeah, you were able to evolve and grow after like owning the gifts that you possess within yourself. You're like, I really value connection. I also really value consistency and like kindness and generosity, and like being in a community with like-minded people. So like finding people that are also entrepreneurial and like understand the process and can empathize with you. So like empathy is like a huge thing that I'm also hearing. And so that's really cool, because when we can start to see that like we have this example in our friendships, this also carries over with romantic relationships. Like I can classify a time in my dating life where I was like, oh, there's these people that like have like the same like pattern reoccurring over and over again. I look back on that and I'm like, oh, I've definitely outgrown that. And now I'm like starting to attract more people that are like very kind, very consistent, very curious about my life and my well-being. And it's shifted the way that things have like been for dating, which is like really cool. So like as we continue to grow and learn about ourselves, our environment will change, our attractions will change. So I say that to like create more hope around like, am I ever going to find a romantic partner? And the answer is yes, because you already have that life experience. There's evidence that your life will change when you continue to be yourself. And then what I will say about keeping particular friendships that you may feel like you have outgrown, I will say that relationships are a vehicle for growth and self-discovery. So like even the relationships that you keep that may not fit into your life currently, or like, I feel like every relationship serves a purpose. So you have your friends that you're really close to that like you can talk business with, you can be super spiritual or empathetic. And then you also have your friends that you've known for like decades. And I don't think that you need to get rid of that. Like, I think it's like realizing that everyone serves their own purpose. And maybe that relationship, like your friendships from the past, are teaching you about longevity and how it's so important that like, no matter what, even if we are imperfect, that they're sticking around for you. Because I have those friends too, where like I've known people for decades, but I'm not exactly talking to them about like personality types or like spirituality, but like I still choose to remain friends with them because we may not have a lot in common now, but they've taught me a lot about like love and consistency. Like we've been friends for decades. So
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like part of it may be, you know, when you're in a long-term relationship with somebody, and obviously you're going to grow and change, and you have to grow and change with them because they're going to do the same thing. So there has to be like communication. Um, this is just me thinking about this in my head because it's never been a thing for me. But I'm sure that's how it goes. Part of the thing for me too is that even my parents still see me as the person that I was before. And I'm like, you guys, that's like 5 people ago. I mean, but it's also, you know, I understand it's kind of hard to keep up, especially these days, because I feel like in the last year, that I've grown so much that, I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to keep up. Um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about dating disappointments. I know we've kind of touched on that a little bit, but we talk about rejection. But as INFJs, we have like these really, really high standards. And I don't know if this is just me or if this is a total INFJ thing, but when I meet somebody, I start thinking about the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all positive and idealistic, and what are our kids' names gonna be? And oh, I can see a white picket fence, you know? I do the same thing with job interviews though too. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm gonna like this commute, and you know, my office is gonna look great. So it's like this whole idealistic thing, and then you get to the point where you're like, oh, this is not what I thought it's gonna be.
Nothing matches that.
Right? So
Yeah.
do you have to train yourself to tone down the idealism? Is that like a problem? Or is it just more matching it up with reality later on?
Yeah, so this is something that I too am also working on, especially as an ENFP. I'm a champion of the people. I'm like, I see so much potential in you. Let's do this. So I can definitely relate to that. I will say that it's not about like eradicating idealism. Like, it's part of it is fun. Like, it's really fun to like live in this fantasy, to like create different possibilities. Like, again, that's a huge gift. Like, to be able to like be in this fantasy world. And that's also just how our brains work, and that's okay. And then realizing, okay, this is kind of like my fantasy. I'm going to create a little bit of distance from it in a way that's like, okay, this is kind of what's happening on this side of my brain. I'm also like really curious about this person and who they could be. And just really seeing that as an opportunity, or even like a signal, right? Of like, okay, I'm kind of like idolizing this person right now. So like, let's actually like, I'm going to like ask them questions. I'm really curious about their life. Like, I'm going to be really inquisitive, which I feel like INFJs do already. So it's kind of like collecting more information about this person to then kind of like be able to like ground yourself, right? Like, okay, like I have this fantasy, but then also like I really want to get to know this person, because something about this person, you're being drawn to them for a particular reason. And so you want to be able to kind of untangle like what is like me idolizing this person, what is reality, what is something that I can work with, what is something like I can't work with. So just again, like collecting more experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard sometimes to separate, and so for most people, I can see right through them, like right away. It's like, yeah, I get you. You know, like you meet them and you got the whole picture. And the more that you get to know them, the more the picture just becomes clear. But it's different when I like somebody, because it's like it's like my superpowers are broken and I can still see them, but I don't want to see them. And I want it to be something different. So it's really, really difficult to say, oh, okay, I do see you. Because I don't want to. I want you to be the person that I thought that you were.
And it's good to know what you want, right? And so I'm really curious about this too, because like with the work that I do, I try to understand when I'm working with clients, like what is this thing that you're matching up to people? Like, because I work with them to figure out like what are their values, and then of course like getting clear on like, well, what are some of like the external and also internal characteristics that you want in a partner, and then also deciding like what's non-negotiable, what is something you can work with, and then what is like a must-have, and then on top of that also being able to create like a, like, what do I do? It's like acknowledging that this list exists, but then also being open to other possibilities. And the way that we kind of navigate the dating world is like being able to see our partner as someone who is kind and consistent and generous. I know that sounds like really simple, but like talking to clients as well as like my own dating experience, I feel like we would rather put like these like values of like, they must be conscientious, they must be entrepreneurial, they must be like self-aware and all these things, which are so important. That's so good that you know that about yourself. At the same time, it's like, is that going to overpower like kindness, consistency, generosity? And for most, like when I hear my clients and also my past experience, for the most time that's true. Like we love to like idealize people. We want to make sure that they fit into this box or this meet every criteria on this list. And then it's good to know that and be aware of that. But then I also invite clients to be like, well, is this person like consistent? Are they treating you well? Are they validating your experience and your feelings and your ideas? And sometimes it's not. And then sometimes it is. And when it is that like the person is inspiring them and they feel really connected, that's kind of what ignites like that attraction again. They're like, oh, okay, like I have something good here. So it's like training ourselves to really feel emotionally and spiritually safe with a person instead of getting like so focused on like a list.
I was talking to one of my INFJ friends this past Monday about this whole thing. We're part of a book club where we're going through Gabby Bernstein's May Cause Miracles, which is a great book. If you haven't read it, you should definitely read it. It's like a 40-day program of letting go of fear and self-doubt and learning how to love yourself and learning how to accept miracles in your life. But we were talking about how INFJs were very controlling. We like to think that we're not, because we're like super laid back, and when there's somebody else around, it's like, oh, whatever you want, like what do you want, I'll make it happen, you know, because that's the extroverted feeling coming out. That's where, when we're the most happy and when we're the most ourselves, is when we're making other people happy. But actually we're like really extremely controlling, especially when it comes to ourselves and what we want. And that's kind of where the whole intuition and idealism and daydreaming come from, because it's like, I have a list. I have a very detailed list. Not only do I have a list, I have a name of a person, and I just have to convince him that this is what he wants.
I love how detailed this is.
But it's so hard to do, and it's hard it would be extremely hard if I was actually committed to convincing this guy. But what's really, really difficult is letting go. It's because you mentioned that a little bit. It's like saying, you know, what's extremely important here, and it's like everything. I put it on the list because I've been thinking about it for like 10 years. So obviously it's important, right? But then when you go through the list and you're like, it's 3 pages, you know, like, does this person really even exist? And this person who I think is like the perfect person, are they really? Am I really seeing them for who they are? Did I make my list to match that person rather than make my list for what I actually want and what's actually important?
Yeah. Okay. I resonate with this so deeply. And for me, I feel like that list that I created, like I created it from like, I know exactly what job I want him to have. He better meditate. He better like, he has to be like blonde. Like it was like down to like a science. And I started dating people like that. And I was like, this is exactly what I don't want. But it took me like a long time to get to that point, years. Because I eventually found out like the person that I thought I wanted to date was like a life coach, and like they had to be like an INFJ actually. And not to say that that's bad, and maybe like the particular people that I was attracting were here to like teach me a lesson, but I learned that like just because you're a life coach doesn't mean that you're like self-aware, or like just because you're conscientious like doesn't mean that you are quote unquote successful. Or actually it's like, well, why are you being so addicted to your work then? Or like all these different things that I was like, I thought I had figured out, but then in the end I was like, this is actually not what I want. And I think that's because I was projecting things onto my partner. I was like, you need to be this thing because this is the thing that I need you to be, and this is like also who I thought that you were going to be. And as I kind of peel back the layers, I'm actually starting to change my attractions, and I'm attracted to people that actually meet the qualities and like the character that I do want, but it doesn't look the way that it did. Like I actually will not date life coaches anymore, but I'm like, yeah, no, my attractions are changing in a way that's like I'm not dating a coach, but like the people that I'm meeting are very self-aware. They are not maybe the height that I want them to be, but they're very kind and they're very curious. They just didn't look the way that I had thought that they would, but I'm still meeting all of the things on that list, if that makes sense. It's like I wanted something so bad I was willing to like go out and get it. And when I got it, I was like, wait, this is actually not the thing that I want. But I also will say it's like going through that experience has taught me so much more than not. So
yeah. That I feel like that's part of the INFJ thing too, is dreaming about what we want and then making a plan to go get it. So, and I've done that so many times. I've done that with a career that I had that was like impossible to get. And everybody told me, like, you're not going to do that. You don't look like somebody who would have that career, and that's not going to happen. And it happened. And I was like, yeah, duh. Like, of course it was going to happen. I told you it was going to happen. And so it kind of gave me this confidence that's like off the charts. So it's like, okay, I dreamed about something that was impossible and I made it happen. So I know how to do that. I know how to put in the work. I know what the steps are, and I can do it. So do I want to do it? Because then the other side of it is I'm not in that job anymore because it wasn't what I thought. It was like,
yeah,
I don't want to know. You know, I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't want to know. And so it's like this whole fine line between going after what you really think that you want, what you have decided that you want, and then letting go and saying, okay.
This isn't it. Well,
this Did you hear my voice change there? Like the tone of my voice?
You totally picked up on that. I mean, this is so relatable too, because I've also had careers like that too, where I'm like, I think I want to be this. And then I'm like, oh no, absolutely not. Like, I think I want to work at a startup. No, I don't. I don't want to be rushed to do things. I want to have resources to do things. And then I realized that this is just like another way for us to be discerning. Like we think we know what we want, and then we go and get it. And then we find out like, oh, this is actually not the thing that I want. And to learn that lesson, we have to like live through that experience, right? To solidify that lesson. Because otherwise we're just going to keep living in our heads and be like, I think that that's what I want, and then never find out. And I will say that plans allow us, to be in control, because we can plan for all of the different variables. We can say, okay, I need to get from this point, or point A to point B, and I can do that. And what's even more scary is like letting go of that plan, which is what you said. And it's really scary to do that. And in the dating world, when I've let go of that list, but also realizing that list serves a purpose, and also realizing that like control serves a purpose. It keeps me safe. It kind of keeps me in that romantic pattern of perhaps choosing the wrong partners, but then like choosing them again. So like I keep kind of getting stuck in this pattern because it's familiar. Like, oh, I know that I'm going to go for this guy. I know probably on a subconscious level that it's not going to work out, but it's familiar because I'm used to dating this type of guy. And then I'll keep the cycle going over and over again because it's so familiar. And at least, I mean, it serves a purpose too, in a way that I get like a little bit of connection. I get a little bit of like mystery. And then I also kind of know how it's all going to end. It's going to end. What's even more like, what's scary about that is like breaking away from that pattern, but also taking the lessons that you learned about yourself from those relationships. Because that list is still, I sound like a broken record, but it does serve a lot of value. And then when you go out and like let go of the plan, then you have to like open yourself up to be vulnerable, to have difficult conversations with people. You got to trust yourself to be in those relationships, and they're going to be messy. And I've realized that I have an aversion to mess. Like, I want to have that plan. It's going to be perfect. Like, I know exactly what I want. I'm going to go get it. But when we like let go of that vision, that plan, and we like open ourselves up to like other possibilities, like that's when like the juiciness comes through. Like, that's when we learn how to trust ourselves. That's when we can open ourselves up to another person. And like vulnerability and like emotional intimacy is so freaking scary. Like, when someone's actually like legitimately into you, like that's the work where you realize that, oh, I have to like start receiving love instead of like giving it constantly. And that's hard. Like, receiving love is a whole other skill. Like, that's a whole other ball game. Cause like, I'm really good at giving. Like, I am also like a people pleaser and a martyr. But being on the other end of someone giving to me, like, that's hard work. Like, that makes me uncomfortable. So that's what I'm trying to learn. And that's what I'm learning right now.
Yeah. I was reading a book about business. And one of the things in the book that's such a huge point, especially about business, and I feel like it's going to relate to relationships too. As INFJs, we get stuck in planning mode. And we feel like we can plan out all of the mistakes and plan out ways to avoid all of the mistakes. And if we just plan enough, we won't make any mistakes and we won't ever get our hearts broken. but the advice in the book, which is the best business advice ever, is clarity comes with action. So you can't plan around all of the mistakes because you're not even going to know what the mistakes are until you actually make them. I feel like that's true for relationships too.
I love that. Clarity comes with action. And I feel like clarity is heartbreak. Clarity is rejection. Like, that's, you get to know how the other person feels about you. You also get to speak your piece. You also get to know that this relationship is over and I can now grieve and I can heal and then I can move into another relationship. This sounds very clean cut, and that's far from the truth. Like, I'm just outlining the process because like heartbreak is so hurtful. Like, you are allowed to grieve for as long as you need to.
Yeah.
But also just know, like, this is clarity. So like I tell my clients this too. It's like, if you're interested in someone, if you're enthusiastic, tell them. Like, you're not going to scare away the right person. You're going to scare away the wrong person. Same with rejection. Like, if you want to ask really deep and profound questions, open up with that, because the right person's going to be like, I love this. Let's continue talking about this. And the wrong person's going to be like, this is too much. This is overwhelming. I don't want to talk to you. So like, it's a filter. Like, you want to be able to attract the person that's going to be the best fit for you long-term. And the way to do that is by being yourself.
It's like we have to unlearn all of the dating advice that we've ever learned. I have a sister who's 2 years older than me, and she used to just like bombard me with dating advice when I was so not ready for it and didn't want to hear it. And I'm like, why would you? And she gave me this book one time, and I actually read it because I had this job that was so boring. I'm like, okay, this is the last thing on earth I want to do. And it was before smartphones, right? So I didn't have a legitimate excuse to do something else. So I'm reading this book, and it's like, I forget what it was called, Why Men Love Bitches or something like that. And
I read that. I read that oh my gosh. Okay, yes, keep going.
There's this part in it where the author is like, okay, so the first time that you make dinner for your boyfriend, you need to pick like the worst thing that you could possibly make. Like get hot dogs and don't even cook them, and don't get ketchup, but like, get something weird that doesn't even go with hot dogs. And it's like, so basically make him this terrible meal that is probably going to give him food poisoning if he actually eats it. Because
I remember this part. I do.
her point was, well, he needs to make the dinner reservations every single time that there's a date. So if he's not doing that, then you just make, or if he asks you to make him dinner, then you just make him this horrifying dinner and he will never ask you to make dinner again. And I'm reading this going, are you kidding me? Like, is this like real advice?
I have to reread this now for inspiration. I mean, there's just so many things that I want to pick apart in this, like the idea of like perfectionism, like expecting a date to always be on or always be perfect or have every single thing calculated without the other person telling them what they need. I am not of like the school of thought around like we should be able to intuit other people's feelings. I know that INFJs have a gift to do that. And we know that we've had this conversation on our last podcast, but like as an ENFP, I'm like, I have I'm pretty intuitive, but like, tell me what you need.
We're not always right though, is part of the thing. And kind of like I said, like we're right probably 90% of the time. And a lot of times people don't want to admit what they're feeling. And then it's like, oh yeah, I was right. See, I told you. Like 3 weeks later. But at least for me, when it comes to somebody that I really like, it's almost like I'm blind. Like I said, my superpower doesn't work because I want to see them in a certain way, and I already have ideas about them, even if I just met them. Like the ideas just go like at lightning speed. And so it's really, really difficult for me to actually see what's going on rather than what I want to go on. So
yeah, and like relationships are about communication. Like again, it's also a skill that you build. So being able to communicate your needs is so important in a relationship. And the first step to get there is like acknowledging that we have needs like on our own. And the way that we do that is by like becoming friends with our emotions and, you know, figuring out like what we really value to then be able to ask for what we need. So if we really value closeness or intimacy, like being able to honor that and see that as a gift instead of being like, I'm being too needy or too much, to then be like, okay, I honor that. Now I'm going to ask for it. So it's like a whole process of learning how to like date ourselves by understanding who we are. So a lot of the work that I do is like self-knowledge so that you can communicate what you want to need in a relationship. And that of course like fuels like self-love, self-trust, and then your attractions change because now you're getting people that are going to honor your gifts instead of stomp on them. And then going back to what you were sharing about this book, I totally empathize with like the audience because I feel like at some point in my life, I was that person that was like, why do I keep attracting these guys that are so hurtful? And being in that position of like, okay, I keep attracting guys that are going to like hurt me. So yeah, I'm going to go to this date after like years and years of like giving and like cooking nice dinners or being thoughtful. Like now I need some advice that's going to work, right? So like I'm going to like cook like the most thoughtless dinner ever and see what happens. So I empathize with this audience, right? Because I was there too. And I think that completely changes when you start to like honor yourself, because at that point you're like, I'm not even going to make this dinner for this dude. Like I'm not even going to make hot dogs. I'm just going to go for the person that's going to treat me better. And that I'm also going to like play a part in this too. Like we can collectively come up with dinner plans. It doesn't have to be like this whole perfectionistic thing. We can be a partnership, but like it's a different mentality to have for your attractions to start changing. So just wanted to highlight that.
Yes. Yeah. I think that was one of the reasons why when I was young, I avoided dating because I was like, you know what? I don't know any of the games. I don't want to play games. And you know, I would never do that to somebody.
Yeah.
So I was just like, no, if that's what it is, then I'm not interested. I'm fine.
And that makes a lot of sense.
They're going to fall out of the sky and smack me in the face and be like, hey.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of conventional dating culture and dating advice is about being the cool date or not caring, or like, let's play the game to see who can care less. And like, that is the correct strategy if you want to attract someone who is unavailable. Like that is the way to get to an unavailable partner. It works. It's really effective. I've been there. I've played the games and I kept on attracting people that were not emotionally available. What changes is when you stop playing the games of seduction. you stop playing it cool. Like, and then you become yourself. Like, you show up authentic, you show up wanting to have deep conversations, you show up with kindness, consistency, and you're going to attract people that reciprocate that. And of course, it's not going to happen overnight. It took me years to get that to that point of like practicing, okay, like I'm going to like figure out what my needs are. I'm going to honor that. I'm going to like figure out like what's going on with my mental health. I'm going to prioritize my well-being. And like this took years of doing like over and over again. So like practicing and practicing. And like now I'm starting to see like the benefits of that. So it's not going to be like an overnight, like I'm deciding to love myself and it's done. I'm figuring it out. I'm going to go out on the dating apps right now and find that person. It takes like so much time and practice to cultivate that.
Yes, I love it. All right. Do you guys have any questions for Gabby? I see that you're having an amazing conversation here, but I don't see any questions.
Oh, another thing I want to share is like, when you're enthusiastic and you let somebody know that you're interested in them, that's actually what leads to a relationship. I know, again, it's not like rocket science, but I feel like that's not what we were told. We were told in conventional dating culture to not be enthusiastic and to not be available in a way. And another thing that I want to acknowledge in our society is like we have wrongfully merged desperation or like manic dependence with enthusiasm, and there's a difference. So like if you're enthusiastic to meet someone and you know that like you're good on your own, like you can meet your needs, but you also know that you can rely on other people to get those needs met, and you are choosing this person to be in a relationship with as opposed to choosing to be in a relationship with anyone that's like willing to be in a relationship with you, like those are very different things. And when you're like, okay, I'm solid on my own, like I love myself. I'm still learning how to love myself even, but choosing to be in a relationship with this particular person because they match you, because you're curious about them, like that's a different way of navigating relationships and just being like, I really need somebody, anyone. So when we realize we're communicating our interest from a place of enthusiasm, that's what's going to get you the partner that you deserve, as opposed to playing it cool. So I wanted to say that.
Yeah. That's such a huge thing too, because so many people say like, don't be enthusiastic, don't say too much, don't say the wrong thing. And it's like, well, what is the wrong thing? Like, why can't I just be myself? Because they'll say, well, just be yourself, but don't do this and don't do that and don't do this. And it's like, I'm so confused. Like, can you write down the rules? Because I feel like it would be a really big book. And how am I supposed to remember all that when I'm trying to talk to somebody that I like? And when I like them, I can't even figure out how to put words together that make sense. So, I have to go through this manual of all the rules and then still try to look at somebody who I find really attractive and be like, and that's where those memes come from of like, do you like bread?
The answer is always yes. That's a great question. Oh my gosh. So, no, I love it. Yes. It's just about knowing yourself and then knowing that there is no right or wrong, because whatever situation is in front of you, it's just another opportunity to learn about what you like and what you don't like. Or maybe I didn't want to say that because I didn't feel genuine, or actually I didn't speak up. And that is like eating me up inside. And maybe actually next time, either with this person or another person, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to tell someone I need something. So it's always just figuring out yourself, because you already have the answers within you. Like no book is going to teach that. It's like, it's really about kind of fine tuning your own process. And what's really been helpful is like, you know, having a coach to like bounce ideas off of, or like joining communities like this, where you can feel safe, seen and heard and understood, and have the resources to develop self-knowledge. Like these things are here to make you better understand yourself, as opposed to reaching for a book that's telling you all these rules. Like, you know the answers yourself. You know what's going to be the best thing for you.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. I love it. All right. I don't see any questions. So tell us where we can find you.
I hang out a lot on Instagram. So Gabrielle Valdes with an S. And then also my website is also GabrielleValdes.com. And I also hang out in the INFJ community. So
yes, we
That too.
love to have you there. You have such great advice, and I have to tell you, Gabby, I know I say this every time that we talk, but you've totally changed my opinion about INFJs, about myself. I love that you love us so much and that you have such a positive opinion about us.
I love my INFJs. And it's been such a pleasure working with you. Every time we work together, it's so much fun. So much fun.
Yes, after this whole coronavirus thing and we can travel again, we're going to have to figure out either Boston or Chicago, either one, because, you know, I've been to Chicago several times and I've never had Chicago style pizza.
Oh, we have to change that. And I've never been to Boston, so we have to change that too. So it's kind of like a two-part trip.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I don't know what's special to Boston. Probably clam chowder.
Okay.
I'm a vegetarian though, so I don't eat clams. But
I am too. So you're gonna have to also
really?
help me out there. Yeah. Is there like a vegetarian alternative, like maybe with like tofu? Like that would be so good.
I don't know. There are some really cool vegetarian restaurants here though. There's actually a couple of raw vegan restaurants, which I'm kind of interested to try, just, you know, because I feel like it would be an experience.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like we have future plans.
Yes. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. We'll do this again soon.
Thanks, Sarah. Have a good one.
You too.